Thrush, yeah, the Swainson's thrush. They're not here yet. They're getting ready to come, though. They are down in the northern Amazon basin, fattening up for a several thousand-mile journey that will bring them to your backyards, through the woods on the edge, and they're going to be looking for big chunks of forest, like the one right up the road. 2 years ago, Perry Barrett asked me to get involved and do something that kind of sounded a bit silly to me, and that was to figure out what makes Gazzam special, ecologically speaking. And so I spent probably a month and a half on and off doing some surveys. And most of the survey work that I do, I study birds. So a lot of my survey work involves standing very still with my eyes closed and listening. And one of the things that really stood out to me about this forest is the fact that it's isolated acoustically from a lot of the Puget Sound drone, from traffic, from boats, from planes. And the scope of what you can hear goes beyond that which you can just about anywhere else around you. You can hear a lot more. I'm going to come back to that because I went back to my little laptop computer and was looking at most of my research took place on the Seattle side of the water, looking at Seattle's urban to wildland gradient, pockets of forest along there. So I used some of the land use data that had been acquired through the lab that I was in at the University of Washington. And this might actually work better because it is small for you to see. But this is the Puget Sound Basin. There's a red dot here in the middle that is the Space Needle. And from that red dot, I drew a 12-mile radius around from the Space Needle. And I wanted to look at what land use patterns were going on within this landscape. And I'm going to pass these around, so you don't, I'll let everybody have a closer look at this. But I color-coded it so it looked kind of obvious that things that are green are green. Things that are gray or black on here, actually in some cases are also green because lawns are technically an impervious surface. The way a lot of development happens today is compressing the soil underneath there, putting the houses in and coming back and putting topsoil on top of that. But when the rain percolates down to that surface, it runs off. So even though this is gray, it might end up being lawns. So what I did with this information is I got rid of everything except forest. So I think the first thing that leaps out is this big chunk of green that we call Bainbridge Island. I look at this and I feel very blessed to live where we live. 71% forest cover, or I call it tree cover. As an ecologist, I try to use the words as animals might define it, that I think a forest to them is a little bit different, and I think that's actually my point here, is that within this 12-mile radius circle from the Space Needle in Seattle, the largest contiguous chunk of forest with an intact closed canopy is right here at Gazzam Lake. Within 12 miles of, we can call it downtown Seattle, the largest contiguous forest, closed canopy, all intact, is this chunk right here. And I came out here in 2000. My history doesn't go nearly as far back as others here. But when I came out here in 2000, I was so excited to get into the woods around here. And what I found were a lot of the same species that I had in my yard in Ohio. We are really good at creating edges between forest and developed land. And that attracts a lot of the same species, whether you're in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I'm from, or Minneapolis, or Missoula, all the way out to here, there's this kind of homogeneous landscape that is suburbia. And there's a lot of the same species scattered throughout there. The true Northwesterners, natives, are those that are using these interior pockets. And they like the older forests that are maturing. And if you go over to the westernmost slope there in the close property, you'll see these huge trees. So the Swainson's thrushes are found all over the country. But when you start looking at their breeding success, where they're most successful, you're looking at big chunks of forest like what we have here and opportunities to protect intact at Gazzam Lake. There's a lot of other voices that you can hear out there that will be returning. This is such an exciting time of year for those of us who like those feathered friends coming back from their warm wintering grounds. Black-throated gray warblers, the lab that I'm in that studies the effects of urbanization on wildlife populations, much greater breeding success in large forests. Wilson's warblers will be showing up, probably of those, they'll be here just in a couple weeks. They prefer those landscapes. And just this past week at Islandwood, where I'm the resident scientist, we had the first flowering of the salmonberry, which is the rufous hummingbird times its arrival to our backyards and to Gazzam Lake, to the arrival of those, to the emerging opening of those flowers. And so this is an exciting time to go out and walk those trails because there's a lot going on. A lot of species are just now coming back from, and they're coming back to snow. Like, what am I doing here? I'm going to go back to Cozumel. Did anybody see those flakes coming down yesterday? Yeah. You know, we have hummingbirds out on the tree, and the hummingbird is dodging these giant clumps of snow coming down. I would invite everybody to take a look at this. It was kind of visually stunning to me to see the intactness. And there's a couple other things. You can see Blake Island here. This is a great image of the island that just show how blessed we are with forests. But if you start looking at a closer look at this landscape, that largest contiguous chunk is Gazzam, surrounding Gazzam Lake. In the bird survey work that I was doing there, we had about 75 species of birds, and a lot of those are those records are contributed by folks in this room who have been walking those trails for a long time. If you include those species that have kind of fallen in the cracks that we haven't seen or heard there, and those that are using the nearshore marine environment, it's well over 100 species of birds are benefiting from that big chunk of forest called Gazzam Lake. 5 local species of salamanders should be there using those forests. We have 2 local species of frogs. We're used to the smaller ones that are louder, and we've been hearing those lately, but there's a larger frog that they're probably using Gazzam Lake, but they also like little tiny pocket wetlands. And that's another special thing about this landscape, is that we all know about Gazzam Lake, but scattered all around here are little pocket depressions left over from the glaciers that are really appropriate breeding habitat for the red-legged frogs, the jumping frogs of Calaveras County fame from Mark Twain. And instead of these great ribbit calls, these are very settled and kind of you have to be really close to them to hear them. And in most landscapes, you don't have that opportunity because their calls are so quiet that the background noise drowns them out. But when you walk around Gazzam Lake and near some of these little pockets, you can hear them because there's not as much urbanization sounds, anthropogenic sound drifting in there. And I guess that would be my main point. When I walk through there, I feel so blessed that we have a landscape on the island that has that natural sound to it, that you can not only hear nature better when you're out there, you can hear yourself better. And I think we need pockets like that for those that are writers and artists that are sharing their skills with us. I bet many of them go to walk those trails for that same sort of inspiration, where they can hear kind of that unfiltered sound from within, that voice from within that helps give them their direction, their muse, their guidance. And so I think that's one of the most special things about that landscape, is that quietness. I keep track of such things, and in my little field notebook that I took with me out when I was out there, I was making notes of the fact that I wasn't hearing a lot of lawnmowers and a lot of these other sound sources that tend to intrude into my thoughts a bit. Any questions?